The Greek philosopher Diogenes was born in 412 BCE in a time of war between city-states. Now, this was a precarious time for individuals whose citizenship, if known, could brand them as allies or enemies. But when Diogenes was asked where he was from, he conjured up a groundbreaking response, one that could only render him an ally. He said, "I am a citizen of the world," or in Greek, a cosmopolitus, what we call today a cosmopolitan. Now, when I say the word cosmopolitan, a lot of you might think of someone from a big multicultural city, like New York, London, Berlin, or you might think of someone with a vast ethnic heritage. However, as Elif Shafak, a Turkish novelist, wrote in an article for the Huffington Post, and I quote, "Being a cosmopolite requires less hybridity than it means the appreciation of hybridity. It requires consciousness instead of blood and genes. If there is no mental or moral bridge between I and humanity, there is no real cosmopolitanism. A true cosmopolitan takes a step beyond mere tolerance of and blind coexistence with people who are different. And he or she seeks to understand difference, to learn from, and to appreciate it." Now take the ideal cosmopolitan and compare him to the man running for president, known for his infamous comb-over, among other things, who called for a ban on all Muslims entering the United States. Compare the cosmopolitan to the image of a mother pulling her child away from a 16-year-old girl in a hijab, a Deerfield student, on the streets of Greenfield. Compare the cosmopolitan to the man in Michigan who called a Punjabi store clerk a terrorist before shooting him in the face. Compare the cosmopolitan to the assailants in Toronto who beat a Muslim woman as she was going to pick up her kids from school and told her to go back to her country. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kiana Rauji, and I am a Canadian Shia Ismaili Muslim, and I'm here to show you that one of the greatest risks we face today as a global community is a dying cosmopolitan ethic. Now, while cosmopolitanism is threatened in a number of realms, I will be focusing on the realm of Islam, on how recent events have engendered hatred and fear, and that ultimately exemplify a deepening divide in understanding. Now, what is a cosmopolitan ethic? The Aga Khan, who is the spiritual leader of the Shia Ismaili Muslims, delivered the Jodidi lecture at Harvard University in 2015, wherein he proposed that this ethic is a readiness to work across frontiers of distinction and distance without trying to erase them. It accepts our ultimate moral responsibility to the whole of humanity, rather than absolutizing a presumably exceptional part. Since the 9/11 attacks, the rise of the Taliban, and now with the advent of ISIS, the world has fought to stop these atrocious extremists, but in the process, it has also unleashed xenophobia. Over 1.6 billion Muslims have been blamed and even branded as potential threats. You see, many have acted out against Islam instead of terrorism. Consider the fact that less than 1% of all Muslims are terrorists, yet we choose to remain ignorant and fearful about the religion of the over 99% of Muslims who reject terrorism. In the words of President Obama, we are not at war with Islam, we are at war with the people who have perverted Islam. Many fail to make this distinction between Islam and perversions of Islam due to their lack of understanding. Even in what we call cosmopolitan cities, where we are in such close proximity with people of different races, religions, and cultures, we are so appallingly disconnected. Since we don't seek to understand difference, we don't understand difference. And we fear what we do not understand. As one of many recent examples of Islamophobia, take the incident that occurred in December 2015 at a high school in Virginia. In a world, geography, and religion class, a teacher gave the students a calligraphy worksheet that prompted them to copy the Shahada, an Islamic statement of faith written in Arabic calligraphy as you see here. The Shahada declares that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. The purpose of the assignment was to give students an idea of the complexity, the beauty of Arabic calligraphy, and the Shahada is the perfect example of that. But when students took the assignment home, parents were outraged. They saw this as an attempt to convert their children to Islam. Unfortunately, all public schools the next day were closed, and the Shahada, an integral part of the Islamic religion, was removed from a religion course. And keep in mind that teaching about religion in a secular context is not the same as teaching religion. What many don't know is that implicit in the phrase, Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, is in fact the understanding that Muhammad was the last of a multitude of previous prophets who conveyed divine messages to all peoples of the world. When understood and interpreted in this way, the Shahada is really a unifying declaration, no longer threatening, and instead affirmative of other faiths. Islam is a faith that promotes intellectual curiosity, compassion, peace, and service to humanity. All Muslim denominations have denounced the acts of terrorists who commit crimes in the name of Islam, just as all Christian denominations denounce the acts of the Ku Klux Klan. As Omar al-Natour pointed out in an article for the World Post, if a drunk driver were to cause an accident, no one would blame the car manufacturers who produce millions of safe vehicles. Most would understand that it was one reckless driver who hijacked the car to cause harm. But when it comes to Islam, we make stereotypical assumptions because we do not exercise the cosmopolitan mindset that would urge us to seek the knowledge to make informed conclusions. Now let's take a step away from Islam for a moment and look at the consequences, the risks of a waning cosmopolitan ethic in other realms and at other points in history. The recent acts of discrimination and police brutality towards blacks in the US are another sad reflection of intense division. In the past, the absence of a cosmopolitan ethic has led to persecution and even genocide. Take, for example, the Holocaust of 1933 to 1945, where Jews were victimized simply for being Jews. Or take the Rwandan genocide of 1994, where members of the Hutu tribe slaughtered members of the Tutsi tribe. Take the Parsley Massacre of 1937, where Dominican soldiers slaughtered Haitians. The common thread in all of these catastrophic events is that difference was rejected. A world where we fear our neighbors, whether they're across the street or across the globe, is not a safe or a sustainable one. But if we can build that bridge between I and humanity, the results can be remarkable. Now, some may say that a cosmopolitan ethic is unachievable, that it's purely idealistic. However, history has shown us that a pluralistic model of governance can set the foundation for a true cosmopolitan society. For example, the Fatimid Caliphate, established by the ancestors of the Aga Khan just over 1,000 years ago in northern Africa, created a flourishing cosmopolitan society. At the start of their rule, the Fatimids created the Aman, a peace proclamation that laid out the principles by which they would rule. The Aman declared their commitment, and I quote, to dispel injustice, to temper aggression, to eradicate transgression, to strengthen the oppressed through compassion and beneficence, to be generous in companionship and kind in association. People of all faiths in this society were granted complete religious freedom and involved in all roles of society with no racial or religious bias. The society that resulted was economically strong, socially pluralistic, and even intellectually vibrant. In fact, the world's first university, Al-Azhar University, was founded and established in Cairo, the center of Fatimid society, around 970 AD. And Fatimid libraries housed the largest literary collections of their time. Now take Canada as a modern example of a society working towards upholding a cosmopolitan ethic. Nowhere is cosmopolitanism in Canadian society better reflected than in its recent welcoming of Syrian refugees in the wake of the Paris attacks. A culture of acceptance and appreciation of difference is ingrained in Canada's constitution. These ideals were first introduced in the Canadian Multiculturalism Act, which not only states that all are equal under the law, but also ensures that diversity is valued and respected. Furthermore, the Act, and I quote, promotes the understanding and creativity that arises from the interaction between individuals and communities of different origins. Of course, as any other nation, Canada has had its struggles in coming to terms with difference, but constitutionally it has made the changes to support certain ideals. Similarly, the motto on the US coin, E pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one, enacts the cosmopolitan ideal of unity despite difference. As with any ideals, in any nation, there are always people who will detract from them. And if we look at the Quran, there is a beautiful verse that also encompasses these cosmopolitan ideals. And it reads, "O mankind, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes that ye may know each other." This revelation, addressed to all of us, not only emphasizes that our differences are made to be known and understood, but it also expresses that we all emanate from the same source, and that despite our separate nations and tribes, our obligations to each other are contingent on the one thing we all have in common, and that is our humanity. I believe that every human being has the capacity to be a true cosmopolitan, but to tend to that capacity, to nurture and explore it, will require us to make an effort to understand difference. So how might we, as the Quran urges, know each other? We can start by looking at a call to action from thousands of years ago, from the Greek philosopher Hierocles. Now, Hierocles further developed Diogenes' idea of cosmopolitanism by introducing a series of concentric circles to model a cosmopolitan identity. As you see here, the first circle is drawn around the self, the next around the family, then the local community, the country, and finally the entire human race. According to Hierocles, the cosmopolitan's task is to draw all of the circles inwards, towards the center, bringing people from the outer circles to the inner circles, and ultimately making all of humanity a part of our concern. To do that, however, we must first seek a legitimate understanding of others by challenging ourselves to engage in and learn from direct conversation with the other. It is important to realize that the other's ways of seeing the world will not diminish our native perspectives, but instead embellish them with delightful and novel nuances. The goal of conversation is enlightenment, not agreement. While cosmopolitanism does insist that there are universal values, like basic human rights, it also believes that difference and disagreement set the foundation for mutually enriching dialogue. And if we can listen to the other with patience and with an open mind, then maybe that gunman will realize that the store clerk is just another human before he pulls the trigger, before he even buys the gun. Maybe then the assailants will become kind strangers who will open the door for the Muslim woman as she goes to pick up her kids from school, and not even think to punish her for the crimes of people that she too condemns. I'm not standing before you today imposing that we should love, or even like the other. I'm simply asking that we make an effort to be citizens of the world before it's too late. I'm asking that we try to truly understand others before we judge, before we fear, before we act. Thank you.